Hey guys, this is Rob from Thunder Drones, and I just wanted to do a quick and dirty video on the three different smaller DJI drones, the DJI Mavic Mini, DJI Spark, and the DJI Mavic Air. People are wondering who's going to hold up better in a crash, and uh, my opinion, hands down, the Mavic Mini. And I'll go into the reasons why. First thing is, the Mavic Mini is the most flexible drone that DJI has ever made. By flexible, I mean it will flex, but it will not break. So check this out. The front gear bends, doesn't break. The arms will twist at least 45 degrees, right? Without breaking the hinge pin. 45 degrees. And then snap back. That's what you want to have on a drone. Okay, especially for beginners who are going to nosedive the drone into the ground a lot of the time. You want a durable but flexible drone. I mean, look at this. To be able to return back to its original position after being torqued like this, I don't know what kind of plastic they're using, but it's different than the different really from every other drone DJI has ever made, and I think it's a fantastic idea. Why do I think it's such a great idea? The arms will bend instead of break, and that's what you want in a drone. I can't tell you how many hundreds of front legs I have replaced for people, how many arm joints I have replaced for people, and this is just I'm sorry for moving it around so much, but this is just going it's really a revolutionary way to build and design a drone in terms of materials. Now remember, just because it'll flex like this does not mean it's cheap build quality. Cheap build quality, if you did this to a cheap build quality drone, it would snap off. Well, DJI has figured out a way to reduce their repair costs by making it flexible. If you've ever been on a 747 and you look out the window, you'll see the 747's wings doing that. Well, they're designed to do that, because if they don't flex, they'll break. Same thing with this drone. It's designed to flex. It's not cheap build quality. DJI does not make cheap build quality drones. They make excellent quality drones. So my next point is, well, to finish the first point, I would rather crash this drone than any of the other drones, as in terms of replacing the arms or anything else. Let's take a look at the Spark. What happens to a Spark if you go head first in and overextend the arm? What's going to happen? It's going to bend upwards, and most of the time it's just going to simply break off like this one. I've done dozens and dozens and dozens of these. So what happens when it hits the ground? Crack, just cracks right off. So what does this mean? It's not a big deal, right? Well, actually it is. Unless you're really good at gluing things, and I don't like to glue things, you have to replace the whole bottom frame on this drone. So what's going to be easier to replace, an arm on this or an arm on the Mini? Mini, you just replace one arm. Take out unsolder it, three wires to unsolder it, replace the arm joint, boom, you're done. This thing is a 2-hour repair. You've got 24 micro solders that you have to do. You have to take all the guts out, unscrew the motors. You've got a different speed control. You've got a speed control for every motor on the Spark. You've got 6 micro solders here, 6, 6, 6. You've got 24 micro solders to replace the frame on this thing. That's a lot of work. Micro solders are a pain in the neck. Then you hope that none of your motors got broken. If one of you or two of your motors got broken, you got to buy 1 or 2 more motors. And that's just if you hurt the frame on this thing. So this thing is not any stronger than the Mavic Mini. In fact, it's weaker. That's my opinion. Let's look at the Mavic Air. Mavic Air has similar, actually this is the weakest one of all the DJI's designs, because the Mavic Air has these foldable legs, and I hate these things. And I'm a repairman, and I hate these things. And the reason why is because it costs customers a lot of money. It costs customers a lot of money because these legs, I call these legs, and this is the arm, these legs will break. Crack just like that. What happens when the leg cracks? You have to replace the whole arm. And you can't glue this. Now, when it breaks, the problem is they're very, very, very fragile. If you do a hard nose in on this thing, you're going to crack one. You got to have to replace the whole arm, and that's a big deal because you've got 6 wires. You got 6 micro wires coming out of this thing, 3 for the motor and then 3 for the LED in the front. They're a nightmare to solder. I mean, I've done, you know, many, many, many of them, but it's really not my preferred repair. So this is the worst design I've ever seen on any DJI drone. It's going to cost you more money to repair this than any other arm on any of the other drones, with the exception of this. You break an arm on that, it's going to be the most expensive repair. But I like the Mini because it will bend and not break, and the design of it is just, it's really not a beginner drone as far as I'm concerned. This is more of a beginner drone. This is the most beginner drone of the tiny ones because it's got forward and rear obstacle avoidance, and you could hear this thing a mile away. Spark has got forward obstacle avoidance, and it's a good beginner drone. But again, if you crash it and break it, it's going to be expensive to fix. This is really, as for an entry-level price, it is not a beginner drone. It's got no obstacle avoidance, and to me, to teach people how to fly, obstacle avoidance is just going to help them in the long term. So, you know, this is a good drone for people who've been flying before, or you're going to use the prop guards on it all the time. But really, the lack of obstacle avoidance makes this more of an intermediate drone or a second drone for somebody who might have owned a drone before. Anyway, moving around to the back legs. The back legs are really, they've improved on any of the designs they had before, the back arms. Because what they did was they made the back arm similar to what it's got on the Mavic 2. So what you're doing is you're benefiting from all the technology that they've put into the Mavic 2. What you've got back here is, if any of you have ever owned a Mavic Pro and you've overextended your rear arm upward and cracked it, this arm joint cracks. And then you're having to talk about replace the whole arm, right? Well, on this, you haven't got a flap anymore. The flap is integrated with the top body of the drone. So what happens when you overextend it, okay, maybe you'll have to replace the inner joint, but it's not going to crack as much as the old arm flaps, because a lot of the times those arm flaps on the Mavic Pro, when this extended up too much, the arm flap would crack and reduce the structural integrity of the drone. On this guy, if it overextends upward, it'll go a little bit further upward and not crack the arm joint and not crack the flap. I just thought this was a great innovation for DJI to do. So this has a similar arm joint design to the Mavic 2. So again, you're getting the latest and greatest technology in this drone. You know, they've worked years and years to improve them, and this is just the latest and greatest design. Now, the replacing a rear arm on this guy is going to be just a lot easier than replacing it on the Mavic Air or replacing it on the Spark. Why? You only have 3 wires coming from the back arm into the body. You only have that 3 wires. To me, means only 3 solder joints. And excuse me, taking this guy apart, replacing the arm on it is going to be, I mean, it's not an easy job, but it's going to be a heck of a lot easier than doing it on the Spark or the Mavic Air, because again, you've got no LEDs in the back, which is fantastic. You just got a single one in the back. So I'm just really in love with this drone. I don't fall in love with many drones, and I thought it was just going to be a cheap drone when I first bought it. But I ended up buying 3. Took 2 of them apart, flew one of them in the rain for 20 minutes. Not a drop of water got in the whole drone. And 3-axis gimbal, which is similar to the movement that the Mavic Air has, but it's not as high res. But let me tell you something. For the stuff that I do, I don't need 4K. Lower res is going to be fine, and the Spark's got even lower res than the Mavic Mini. So this is a fantastic gimbal. And one thing about the gimbal, DJI has had a problem with horizontal stability of their gimbals. So if you do an abrupt yaw, the gimbal's, Mavic 2 Pro is got a bad problem with it. Some of the Mavic Pros have a problem with it to return to horizontal after you do a yaw. Well, let me tell you something. This is the most solid gimbal For a $399 drone, including remote controller, it's the most solid gimbal I've ever seen on a DJI drone. It just maintains horizontal and maintains horizon better than any other drone I've ever seen. Like I said, when I first got my Spark 3.5 years ago, however long it was, my problem was I bought 3 of them, and 2 out of the 3 had a snap gimbal, and I never liked that. The pitch was fine, but if I abruptly yawed too much, the gimbal would just rotate 45 degrees in one way and then snap back to center. Rotate, you know. I never liked that about the Spark. I never got used to it. I don't know if they've ever updated it, but, you know, I just didn't like it from the get-go. The Air has a great gimbal on it. It's a little bit of a pain in the neck to replace it because, again, it won't, you might get a gimbal error or a camera error after you try to replace the gimbal in one of these things. Try to replace the gimbal in one of these, you're not getting any errors. You can buy the gimbals for, I think, about $160. I sell them as well. You can find them on eBay. But it's just a fantastic little drone. I really can't say enough good things about it. And I'm not one of these DJI fanboys. In fact, I hate the company, but I love their products. But they just did everything right on this drone. Which one is going to be best in the wind? Really, it depends on how much wind. If you've got more than 10 miles an hour wind, you're really asking for trouble. If you take off downwind and end up flying 50% of your battery downwind, you're probably not going to make it back. If you got a 20-mile-an-hour wind, they're all going to pretty much hold their own. But again, if you take off downwind and try to return upwind, you're going to have a big problem. Which is the best in the wind? Really, all 3 of them are great. The Spark has been my favorite in the wind because it is just super duper solid. I don't know what that may be, the higher RPM props than the Mavic Air has on it, but this has always been my favorite in the wind. And you know something, I can't say bad things about the Spark because it was my favorite drone for 3 years. My pet peeve about it is after they came out with the Spark, 6 months later they came out with the Mavic Air for around the same price, and I could have just killed DJI because it had a better gimbal, had foldable arms. But anyway, I digress. This is still a great little drone. If you've got one of these, if you've got a Spark, if you've got a Mavic Air, should you sell it to buy a Mini? Absolutely not. Why? What is that much different than these 2 other drones? It hasn't got 4K. It's smaller and more portable. The batteries are a little bit cheaper. But these two, the Mavic Air and the Spark, are 2 perfectly good drones. So don't sell these to buy this, unless you're into novelty. This is a good drone, but it lacks some of the features as its bigger brothers and more expensive brothers. If you're first starting out, this is a great drone to buy, but just bear in mind, you should use the prop guards. You should definitely get DJI Refresh or State Farm, and you should be very careful about flying it because it's got great everything. It tracks well, it gets great satellites. I haven't gotten a single compass error out of this drone. Whereas these 2 guys, I get compass errors all the time. So they just did it right with the Mavic Mini. Why I say it's not a beginner drone is, again, because it has no obstacle avoidance front and rear. And to me, and a beginner, that's a big thing. But to protect yourself, get the DJI Refresh, get State Farm if you can't get Refresh, and get yourself some prop guards. And hopefully you won't have any trouble. But again, if you have to get it fixed, it's going to be a lot cheaper to fix than these 2 guys. Anyway, I think it's a damn durable drone. Everybody's entitled to their opinion, but having fixed and flown, I have about 4,000 logged flights. This is a great little drone. Flexible. I wouldn't mind crashing it, and repairing it is going to be as cheap or cheaper than repairing either of these other guys. Anyway, have fun, happy Thanksgiving, and talk to you guys later. And please like my video.